So I'm with Knutson Associates.
Jeez, that's hard to say.
Yeah.
Knutson?
Knutson Associates.
Knutson Associates.
Which is fine. You could just say Kyle Nishiyama.
Okay.
Realtor on the Big Island. That's fine. Yeah.
Aloha guys, this is Carl, Top Notch Home Inspections. I'm here with Kyle Nishiyama. He's a seasoned agent. I've worked with him often, and always a pleasure to work with Kyle. He really is good at bringing his clients through the home inspection process. We pick things up after things go into escrow, that offer's been accepted, and we come in and we're really good at finding things. But then from there, we just kind of turn over the report to you and your client, and I'm kind of interested on where things go from there. So maybe you could share a little bit with us.
Yeah, so after Carl or somebody from Top Notch hands us our inspection, the first thing that we do is kind of review those findings with the buyer. Obviously, it's really important that whoever is purchasing the property understands the full report, and you guys are great about meeting us at the property at that time and meeting us in person to go over any of those details. But if the buyer is in the mainland or the buyer is not here in Kona or on the island, getting on the phone with them immediately and just talking to them about every single listed item, just line by line by line, right? And sometimes this is a 10 or 12 page report, and so it can be time consuming, but it has to be done.
It's important.
And so beyond that, making sure that they understand, kind of like a level of hot or cold, if you will, as far as level of priority for the repair to be made. Is it a small repair that maybe the buyer can do after the time that we close and it seems pretty minor and we can do it ourselves, no big deal.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we try to do with the home inspection report to make it easier for you is to color code things. We have 3 colors, blue, orange, and red. And that at least gives you kind of a starting point. But I can't stress enough is to know what you're looking at, especially from a buyer's perspective. And that's something that's really great for the home inspector. We can kind of walk you through that. But the agent as well, agents that have gone through this, they see these types of things show up on the home inspection report over and over again, and they can advise, hey, this is not that big of a deal, or hey, this is something that you definitely want to get taken care of before closing.
And I will say, not only are you guys super thorough throughout that process of doing the inspection, but like he just mentioned, even when you're reading the report, it is so detailed and it's so easy to gauge and see, like you said, blue, orange, or red, cold, lukewarm, or hot, and it's very user friendly. It's really translates very easily and simply so that you can understand what the level of priority is for that repair.
Yeah, so you're going through everything with them, and then I understand there's credits, there's repairs that you can request. So one of the things that I get asked a lot from buyers is what's appropriate to ask from the seller.
Sure.
And I have to say one thing that I do know for sure is that the seller is really not required to fix anything.
Yeah.
We're there to give you a home inspection so that you can decide based on the findings if the home is something that you want to take ownership with in its current condition. Now, sometimes it's appropriate to ask for repairs and for credits, and you're still in that negotiating period during the J1 process. So maybe you can just share when it is appropriate.
Totally. So first of all, I do want to say always get a home inspection no matter what. Even knowing what Carl just said, that the seller could very easily refuse to make any repairs. They could refuse to offer any sort of concession to the buyer for repairs that need to be made, but you still should pay for a home inspection and have one done, because that way in the next few years what's going to be coming up. But at that time, once you do have a little bit of, you have a report with a few repairs and you want to talk to seller, it's really important to kind of take a step back at that time and gauge where we're at in this process, because if you've signed an as-is addendum, for example, you've already kind of told the seller that you're taking the property as it is. Now, with that said, if there's a major repair that needs to be made, like the roof is falling through or there's a crack in the foundation, that's why you had that home inspection done. That's why you have your inspection period, so you can cancel escrow, retain your earnest money deposit, and get out before it's too late. Because the repair is just too big, right? But aside from that, if you guys are gonna go and try to negotiate say a $1,200 credit for a drywall repair or a $500 credit for some electrical work that needs to be done at the property, the first thing that you need to do before you even request that credit is go to a professional and get a quote for what that repair is going to cost. That's my first recommendation, is seek out the professional in that field, right? Whether it be, like I said, drywall work or electrical work or a plumber. Let them know what the work is, have them give you a quote for the repair to be made, and then present the seller with that information and say, hey, here's a couple of quotes.
It's a little bit more legitimate.
Yeah, and so although we're asking for this credit, here's kind of the information to back up our request. We're not just pulling a number out of thin air.
Yeah. So who typically is responsible for going and getting that quote? Is it does the agent usually take that over for the client, or does the client do it themselves and you're more hands off with it?
Well, if you're working with me, I personally take on that role, and I try to do as much as possible on behalf of my client just to make their lives easier. You know what I mean? But some buyers, I will say, maybe you have a friend or a family member who's in that professional field, and you say, oh, my brother's a plumber, he can do that for me.
Or
after
closing,
closing,
or what it costs.
Yeah, exactly. And so he'll give you a quote now, maybe he'll take care of it after closing, but you just want the credit, you don't want the repair. That does happen sometimes, and it's totally an option. I would also try to just say, or I would also like to say that, in the event that a seller, if you're going to ask a seller for a credit, don't assume that they're going to agree to it. Everything in the contract is negotiable, and so they could counter you. If you ask for a $500 credit, they could come back and say, we're only going to offer you $300 or $250. And at that time, you have to decide, is it worth it? Is this the hill that I want to die on? Because I'm here to buy this house, right?
Yeah.
And I'm here to get this property. And this $250 repair is so small in the scheme of things that sometimes it's worth it to just move on.
Yeah.
So.
Especially considering what you've gone through up
to
until
get to
that
this point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and sometimes you can get kind of too narrowed in on those fine details and forget about the big picture, which is, this is the house I want. I already made an offer. I already got a home inspection and paid for it. I'm fairly happy with the condition of it. Move forward.
Exactly. Yeah. And especially too, if you've negotiated a little bit off list price, or you've gotten it into escrow for a good deal, maybe letting go of some of the smaller repairs isn't such a bad thing.
Yeah.
So. And
understanding what the repairs are, that's something that as we as home inspectors can kind of give you a ballpark on some of those smaller things, because we see them often, like, hey, the GFCI, which are the outlets that you see, the receptacles that you see in bathrooms and kitchens. Sometimes their functionality degrades over time, about 10 years. So sometimes they won't trip like they're supposed to, and they need to be replaced. Well, it's a $15 part. An electrician takes them about maybe 5 minutes to change that out, 5-10 minutes. So it's not a huge deal, although it may be a red item on the report because there's a safety feature built into this component and it's not functioning as it should. So it needs attention now, and it looks like a big deal, but it's actually not. So if you don't understand something on the home inspection report and you're not really sure about the severity of it, it's always good to really ask.
Absolutely.
Either your inspector. One thing we try to do is we try to meet with you there at the property at the end to go over the findings. If you can't make it, we're working with a lot of buyers off island that haven't even seen the house. We'll get on FaceTime with them, walk them through, or we can sit down and look at the report together and kind of go line item through line item and really look at this, answer questions that you have. So that's super helpful and kind of helps to facilitate the moving forward of things, which is really the goal of everybody through the process.
Another thing too that really is helpful during the home inspection process is things come up during your home inspection that you don't realize you need to have done prior to an appraisal taking place. And so Carl or some of these guys will point out to us that, hey, this smoke detector is not actively working, or this water heater doesn't have earthquake straps and you're in this specific area and you need that. And so if you don't have all of these things noted and taken care of prior to an appraiser walking in the door, the appraiser is going to walk right back out and say, hey, this stuff's not done. So it's so important to just use a great home inspector and make sure that they're thorough and make sure that your agent is on top of whatever those details are that come up throughout the inspection.
Well, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
I wanted to briefly touch on repairs and credits. Repairs versus credits. All right, so you're going to ask for a repair, you're going to ask for a credit. One of the cons that I see often, because just to mention, we do re-inspections where, let's say you ask for a series of repairs, and at that point you want to verify that the repairs have been done appropriately,
yes,
professionally,
yes,
and that they're going to hold up. So we can come back in with a list. Usually your agent sends over and says, hey, these were the agreed upon items. Go back and go check them. We do a separate report, and we take new photos and everything. And it's often that we find when repairs are done by the seller, sometimes they're done a little subpar.
Yeah.
Not always, but that is one of the cons, is it was done, but not done to the best of its ability, not really done professionally.
Sure. So sometimes, the buyer will be in a position where they say, hey, for whatever reason, I'm just not in a position to make repairs myself once I move in. So I would so much rather seller facilitate this work, whether they be elderly or maybe I don't know what the reason is, but for whatever reason, they don't want to do any repairs. And so, I see that happen, and we allow seller to make all of the necessary repairs, or we accept a credit at the end if that's the way that we choose. Other buyers, though, like I had mentioned earlier, sometimes buyer is a handyman, or a buyer is already a construction worker or a general contractor, or he has experience. And so sometimes buyer is would much prefer a credit for some sort of dollar amount.
Yeah.
That way they can do the work themselves, they can monitor the work that's being done, they can decide, rather than using clear grout, they want white grout, or rather than using, whatever product they would rather substitute in. People like to take that into their own hands sometimes. Yep. And so what I would say too is, in the event that a seller agrees to make a repair and it's not made to the buyer's satisfaction, make that known to the seller and, ask them to either A, correct it, or B, credit you for the work because it wasn't done properly.
And that's one of the advantages of getting a re-inspection. We don't make much off of re-inspections, so I don't push them too hard, but to be honest, if I were going to get repairs done, I would always have it re-inspected.
Yes.
Not everybody can get on the roof and look at things with a trained eye like we can, so you need to verify that they've been done correctly, and then we provide a written report that you can then take to them and say, hey, the inspector says this was only partially done, or this was not really repaired to the quality that we would have liked, or it wasn't repaired at all, and this needs to be done before we take ownership. This was agreed upon. Please go make it right, and we'll have them come back out.
And it really kind of takes some of the pressure off of the buyers and the sellers, because then it's not coming from either one of them. It's never personal when it's coming from a third party, if that makes sense. And so rather than me coming in and saying, hey, I don't think you did this right, there's a professional here to say, hey, this could have been to this, caliber, and it would have been done properly.
And one thing that you can do to really facilitate that the repairs are going to be done accurately is to use our repair request builder. It's an incredible tool that's built into all of our reports. You just hit a button, it pulls up a whole interface with all of the observations on the report, and you can select the ones that you want to give to a handyman, a plumber, an electrician. You can create as many of these documents as you want, and they take about 30 seconds a piece to create.
It's very user-friendly.
You can give the actual write-up with photos to the professional making the repairs. Odds are they're going to repair it appropriately based on what the home inspector wanted to see. And that's key. You need to transfer that information appropriately. I've had times where I come in and we said the hot water heater needs some seismic straps and the TPR pipe put on, and we come in and it's a brand new hot water heater but still the same deficiencies.
Yeah.
So that's a breakdown in communication where it's like, you have a brand new hot water heater but the same things are still wrong with it. So just transferring that information is really, really important throughout that process.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, well, thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man.
Yeah.
I'm happy to join you for this video.
Yeah, and if you have questions for Kyle, if you want to share your contact
Yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions for me whatsoever, you're interested in real estate in Hawaii, you can look me up on Instagram at Real Hawaii Estates. You can also visit realhawaiiestates.com, or you can email me, Kyle at realhawaiiestates.com.
Yep, awesome agent, very seasoned. I see his buyers very pleased with the way that he kind of brings them through this entire process. And if you'd like to visit us, hawaiitopnotch.com. We have a lot of resources, videos on all of our additional services that really explain them in detail. And our Instagram, where we put lots of little findings and things. It's fun to kind of follow. It's homeinspector_Hawaii.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Aloha.